Welcome everybody to the August 17th Ortelius architecture meeting. Let me share my screen. If Zoom will give it back to me. Give me 1 second here. Here's the link to the doc. Go ahead, sign in. I'm gonna try to get back to recording all this stuff on the I owe a bunch of recordings to be posted, so that's on my to-do list. There's the doc. Let me share my screen. So just to, some of you may have noticed on Discord there was a bunch of chatter going on around GitHub changes and updates. So Trace and I worked on creating some of the projects. So using the new project board and the GitHub, we kind of followed what was being done in the CD events. They had their layout pretty good. So we've created the Ortelius releases, Ortelius outreach, and the Emporis stuff. We may down the road move the Emporis into Ortelius, but right now it's just separate to keep things easier. So if we go into the Ortelius releases, one of the things that we did was we created basically 2 milestones, two milestones. So we have the version 10.01. This is the current maintenance stream that we have to kind of work on. Some of the stuff we have, some of the stuff I wasn't quite sure where to put. Arvin, you had some of these issues out here with like for your practice. I don't know if we want to put that in, we just put that under administration. So basically the way I kind of did it was, zoom in here, make this a little bigger.
I will complete those issues in this week.
Okay.
Hey Steve, are you recording this?
Yes.
Okay.
So administration kind of equals the DevOps stuff, daily GitHub maintenance, Helm charts. That's kind of like the catch-all for stuff is the administration. So when you look at the administration grouping, it, you know, like I said, it's going to be kind of the catch-all. So it's not necessarily going to be like you need to be an administrator to do it. It's just the catch-all bucket. The other buckets that we have are going to be like the UI front end, which is front end design and coding, core, which is our microservices, the middle layer, and then the database backend pieces. Emporis hasn't built their piece out yet, so I don't have the breakdown yet. So if you look at the Emporis project, it's basically a placeholder project for that. So the Emporis is basically empty at this point. I'm going to work with Alex and Kat to build this out. So that will happen. All the other old projects we kind of cleaned up and archived. And we moved things around. Now, one of the things when you you'll see in order to get this grouping, we added a column called area. So if you actually go into an issue, so this is just the view from here. You actually have to go into the issue itself, and you'll see on the right-hand side that will have an area as well, I thought. Okay, it's not here. There's the milestone. So basically here we still have our labels. We associate it to the project, and then we associate it to the milestone. And then once we have it on the milestone, you come back over to this page here, and then you can, there's a drop down for the area. And the area just allows us to group front end, back end, that type of thing. So that's how it's laid out.
And Steve, can you show the Kanban?
Yep.
Board?
So that's where I'm going to go next. So this is the table view, and we can go to the board view. So the default Kanban template is just to do, in progress, and done. So we've added in testing and documentation. So once like the coding's been done and like the PR has been completed, we can go ahead and close the issue and move it to done. Or actually, don't close the issue, but move it to done, the status. And then if we need testing or documentation, if there is no testing or documentation, then we can just go ahead and mark it as done. Close it. Right now, the filter is set for looking at only the open issues in that milestone. So these things you can tweak on your own and kind of play with the filter. Also, you can make a copy of the filter as well. So if you want to have a private view of this data, you can go ahead and make a copy of this public one to your own ID and associate it that way.
Hi, Sergio. It's been a long time. It's good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, feel the same. Thank you. Good, and you?
Good. I was going to ping you yesterday and see how life was treating you. I was like, when we were working on this, I came across some of your stuff, and I was like, I wonder how Sergio is. We should probably go through this with him.
I am almost thinking too quick and having more time because it's not working right now. This thing about having more space, but I'm glad to be here at least today.
Awesome.
And so in the list in the version 11, which is the XRPL stuff, we'll be pulling all that together. One of the things is kind of in, where is it? Sorry for scrolling around so much. It's on the abstraction layer pieces, the denormalize, normalize, the JSON strings. I've had to rework that when I was working on the component version. One of the things that when we have at a component version, we have the associated SBOM, and we need to store that SBOM into our Rango database. Now, one of the things that I did before was we had like a user object, and we had a group object. We had a component version object. Those Golang objects that we could marshal and unmarshal to and from JSON. I did look at, there are Golang libraries and structures for the SBOM format, but they're very complicated. There's about a dozen of them to represent an SBOM. So what I did was I kind of I'm in the process of tweaking the JSON normalization, denormalization function to be able to take any type of JSON structure and move it into the normalized structure that we need for storing it into NFT storage. So that's almost done. It's not going to really affect anybody. It's more of just the underlying internal coding just to make it more generic. Now, what this means is we'll be able to not only store the SBOMs in their native format, but also CVE database stuff. All that can be now stored as native JSON or anything else we run across. Let's say we get a report from a new tool, a testing tool, and that testing tool has some sort of JSON output that we want to associate to and store in our database. We'll be able to do that. Same thing like with the Swagger. Swagger can come in an XML format or a JSON format. And there's programs out there that'll transpose the XML to a JSON. And once we have it in the JSON, we can actually store that as raw JSON in our database as well. So all like the Swagger open API JSON format, that will end up being just as a JSON document in the Rango database. Well, and the nice thing when we do it that way is we'll be able to have those attributes to be able to search as well. And then the normalized, denormalized functions will be able to collapse all that redundant data stored on IPFS through Ukarsh's microservice and be able to pull and do all that back and forth stuff and deal with the blockchain. So I'm hoping to have everything wrapped up by the end of the week here on that. And once we have that, a lot of these out here are like kind of stubbed, and we'll be able to go through and replace all the stubs with the real data on that front. One of the things I did go back and look at the Svelte versus React. And I think for what we are doing and the layout, the Svelte that Joseph found will probably work better. The reason being is it's a little more template-y than inline code, HTML inside of strings inside of the code. So it at the end of the day, it ends up being compiled basically React code. But I think the Svelte is going to work better in that front. So we will be implementing the Svelte, and my goal is to start working on that next week to be able to take data from a pipeline, push it through a new CLI over to the backend database, and then take that backend database and display it in the UI. It'll be pretty rough, but it'll give us that round trip piece to start with. At least that, and then we'll have to figure out, Ukarsh, you and I coordinating and plumbing in the piece for the NFT storage and blockchain pieces. But that'll be next week once we get further down the road. Anybody that is interested, we do need to do some high level design for how we want to navigate like application lists, component lists, those type of things. We need to do more research on how we want like the front end landing page to look like. From there, how we want to get started, because we have two scenarios. We have an empty database scenario, and then we have a 2 terabyte worth of data scenario. How do we navigate those two extremes in the UI? If you're interested, reach out to Tracy. She's going to start working on that. And I think we could do a shared Figma. Figma is just like Google Docs for UI design. So we can set that up and start working on the layout there.
I will.
Okay. So I will create the starting point for the Figma and get it shared out to everybody, so you have access to it, and you can do online collaboration that way. So that's kind of where we're at this point. Trying to think if there's any other pieces. This list will grow and change as we go through. As things evolve, we'll, like the application list item here may get broken out into, it'll be more like an epic, and then we'll have individual stories underneath it for the actual work. That's kind of the thought process I got going on right now. Anybody have any comments, questions?
Can we make a share doc in which we can share all the possible UI stuff that we like? Like
Yes.
You like a website, you put the link, and you can tell that I like the navbar and take idea from that.
Yeah, I will put that in the Figma document site. So we'll have a shared Figma doc, which Figma allows you to drag and drop boxes and stuff like that, and do some basic, UI design. And in that, you can put comments and links and stuff like that. And like one of the ones I found that I liked was there's a project management software called Monday. And they have a really nice UI design. Other one, we should put in there ones that we don't like either. So like if you're totally annoyed by Docker Hub and how to search and find things in Docker Hub, put that in there as like, don't do this type of UI. It's just as good to have the what to avoid as what we should include. And what I'll do is I'll get that link out and I'll send it out in Discord.
Okay. I will also start learning Flat and start experimenting with Figma.
Yep. Yep. The Svelte, there's a couple tutorials for Svelte. I've played with it for doing like a hello world. It's pretty easy. One of the things that happens with Svelte is it's actually, because it's like a templating language, you actually run through a compile step that will take all the templated tags and stuff like that and compile them into a very stripped down, minimalized, pure JavaScript implementation. And I can't remember if, I think you avoid using like jQuery. I haven't gotten that far into it, but I believe you are able, it has enough functionality and access to the objects at the Svelte developer level that you don't have to bring in another library like jQuery as part of that. And it keeps a really small footprint, which is nice.
All right,
Yeah,
everybody.
he doesn't use it.
And the other part on Svelte is there's the Svelte Material UI toolkit. So Material UI, and this is one of the other reasons why I wanted to give Svelte a go, is the Material UI libraries are basically, so Material UI came about from Google, and they did a bunch of research on what people find appealing for UI elements. So a button should be X big. The wording, the wording on a button should be so many pixels from the edge of the button. It should have a certain radius for the rounded corners. It should have certain colors. It should act certain ways. So when you press on it, you should see that there's a response, like the text changes color, that type of stuff. So Google did all this research for Material UI and created that, the Material UI project, and Svelte has adopted a lot of those objects. So the more we can reuse and be standard, I think the slicker and more appealing the UI will be.
And which package manager you are using, like npm, yarn, npm?
I'd have to look at, I don't remember the package manager, how Svelte is packaged. Because like I said, it's compiled. So I have to get back into that, Arvin, to answer that question.
Because there is one called Vite, VITE, which is a way faster than npm, and yarn.
Yeah.
So it will make your development process a little bit faster.
Okay. Yeah. So either once we get into the Svelte, and like Arvin, if you're doing practice with Svelte and you find that, Yarn's better over npm, or the new one that you found works better, just let us know, and we can figure out how to adopt it. We're early on to make.
I will do the benchmarking test today and share the results in the Discord.
Okay, cool. Because what we'll have to do is, as part of the Docker build of the UI, we will we'll run through the compiler and whatever other package management we need to do at that level. And so if you find one that's the best and fastest, we'll go ahead and implement it in that Docker build.
Okay, I will do it. I will share the result tomorrow.
Cool. And whatever you find, Arvin, for like tutorials and libraries and things like that, let's just keep on throwing that into the dev channel on Discord so people know about it. We may want to kind of writing it down, like maybe in a blog or in the like contributor guide on, you know, libraries to, or basically like a Svelte setup world on how to get that part set up, because we have places in the contributor guide that Sasha wrote around, you know, how to set up your development environment. We may need to add on to that.
Can you create an issue for that, and I will assign myself?
Yeah. And I'll hunt down the page where it's located in which repo and stuff for you. But I'll create a new issue for that.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
So there is a lot of work actually. Now I can see that.
Not that much work. It's a lot of it does look like a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of rinse and repeat type of scenario. So that's once we get some of the like initial pieces plumbed all the way together, repeating that for another object, I don't think is going to be that difficult. So changing out a microservice in a front end to go from a group object to a user object should be pretty easy. You know, because it's just going to be replacing object data and then just rearranging the, you know, where the fields are on the UI front end piece. That's what I'm hoping.
Cool.
Just to mention that it looks really great. I mean, the project view, I know it's a lot of work, but it looks simple to understand. The areas helps a lot. Like, okay, you're mainly working on these areas, and I think the titles are simple too. So I can think this is good for internal development, but I think like common people can get here and have a good idea about what is going on. So
yeah,
that's
and
what
we're
to say. That's great.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, you know, like Tracy found it on the CD events, the way they had it set up, and we just kind of stole it from them, the organization. So if we need to add a new area, let's say administration's like too generic and we want a DevOps or GitHub a grouping, we can add those. It's real simple. So that, I think if we stick to it and we keep things moving on, the one thing we may want to do is, you know, I wanted to get everybody's feedback about how it was laid out. And if it looks good, we may consider figuring out how to add like a sprint. So maybe like a 1 week or 2 week sprint. So we can kind of get things assigned to that sprint and kind of checked off at that level. So that may be something that we need to focus on. And also we have Hacktoberfest coming up, and we'll have to create a bunch of or tag a bunch of issues for Hacktoberfest. We're probably looking at least 12 to 20 issues that we should tag for Hacktoberfest for people to work on.
This time Hacktoberfest has decided to not give t-shirts. So I think the more the people will contribute, they are generally true. because last time they were doing it for the t-shirt only.
Yeah, and that would be, I know on the outreach side, Tracy was doing some, the outreach committee was doing some, blogs, for, Hacktoberfest. We'll probably go that route as well. Cause
Uh,
that helps people, get familiar with things. So we'll probably do some things along that as well as coding.
I talked with one of my sons, who is currently studying in CMU, Candice Mellon University. He had joined the server. He will join the Discord meeting soon. So we will get some traction from a good university.
Cool. Yeah, and if we can spread the word, and we have some good first issues for Hacktoberfest, I think we can get a lot of people to, get a few people to come in and help out.
Yeah, I will work on that one.
How big is your university, Arvin? How many students?
Uh, he worked at Fountain, but he left Fountain and pursued MS in the USA.
Okay.
So I know him.
Oh, and another side note is Tracy and I participated in the so in the US here we have something called Space Force. And Space Force is a government agency. It's like the Air Force and the Army and stuff like that. And there is something called the Hyperspace Challenge that helps connect small businesses to the bigger government agencies. So we were on that introduction call yesterday, and it was quite interesting on the type of things that they're looking to do, and the evidence catalog and supply chain management is one of the areas that they're looking for help on. But it's pretty crazy listening to these scientists talk about how to make a satellite avoid space junk that's flying at it, or how to catch the space junk to keep it from damaging the satellite. So there's this whole weird thing about protecting the satellite assets up in space that Space Force is worried about. Because a satellite's a pricey little piece of metal flying in the sky. So
it's not like the common use cases that you're going to
no,
challenge.
yeah, it was interesting listening to all of them, talk about how we can move a satellite and how much energy it's going to cost, how do we refuel it, how do we make this stuff happen. They are also talking about like one of the ideas that they have is they need to be able to have portable antennas that they could then aim at a satellite so they can create a big data pipe in a certain location to move data quickly up and down from the satellite. So there's all sorts of weird things like that they're working on, but fortunately part of it is supply chain, software supply chain. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see how things move along. Interesting space though, literally.
Well, and this is Ortelius. I don't know, things like fit really well.
Yeah, a lot of it is, you have all this software running up on a satellite or a space vehicle on Mars or on the moon. How do you prevent it from being hacked and taken over and by another adversary? So it's interesting.
Sounds cool.
But just it's cool stuff. We're going to keep eye on that, and we'll let you know what happens there. Just thought, so check out Space Force.
Okay, I will.
All right. Anybody else have anything else? All right, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.